One of my favorite things about Cowboy Bebop is its style. From its many genre nods to pop culture references, every time I watch the series, I catch something new. It lends itself to high rewatchability, which could have something to do with why it's still so popular nearly 2 decades later. But more than that, this hybrid of styles, archetypes, and narratives makes the series unique. It never becomes tired, as its variety keeps things fresh with each venture, rarely hitting the same note twice. Ask 10 fans what their favorite episodes are, and with a few exceptions, you'll probably get 10 very different lists. Bebop's styles range from the most obvious to the more subtle and even the absurd. Many of its episodes borrow their feel from some other genre, time period, or work. Several are direct parodies of other films, like Toys in the Attic, a riff on Ridley Scott's sci-fi horror classic Alien. Even if you have no idea what the series is referencing, or this is the first exposure you've had to a genre it's going for, Bebop pulls it off well enough to stand on its own 2 feet. These aren't just cheap parodies or flimsy imitations. That hybridization is what makes it special. The fact it can bounce between so many styles and never get buried beneath it all, never lose itself. With all these pop culture hits, character tropes, and genres to sift through, it raises the simple question: where does Cowboy Bebop come from? Series creator Shinichiro Watanabe has said his primary influence was Lupin III, but he also paid tribute to his favorite American films and series shown in Japan during the 70s and 80s. So how and where did all that influence come together in the series? Let's first take a broader approach and examine the series' use of genre. Drawing from westerns, mob movies, detective capers, action thrillers, space jazz, film noir, and a whole bunch of other shit, Bebop pulls each off with impressive flair. The end product of it all is something animation hadn't really seen before. It's easy to see why that blend of styles is where most of the study on the series has gone. Bebop was really the first of its kind to remix the people, places, and images we're familiar with in such a transformative, expansive way. Watanabe himself created a tagline for the series that was eventually used as an eye catch during the show's original run, which labeled it the work which becomes a new genre itself. Though, in a 2003 interview with Anime Insider, Watanabe retracted the statement, having this to say about it: "A hilarious chain of events, but the point still stands. Bebop can't be nailed down to one label, and even though some genres are predominant over others, the show never hits the same jive for more than an instant. Each vignette brings with it a new air to take in, a glimpse into yet another world Bebop's universe has to provide, each a perfect fit for the narrative it describes. Spike's past, for example, is a grim tale full of regret, betrayal, lost love, and desire for vengeance. Fittingly then, his encounters with Julia and Vicious are classic film noir. Noir isn't the only genre Bebop executes like the best of them, of course. It's practically the model for great space westerns. The setting, while in a highly advanced location, doesn't lose the grit of a traditional western. It's still intimately recognizable as our world. The people, attitudes, and cultural climate feel familiar even if they don't always look it. Bebop being Bebop, emulating westerns to near perfect degree isn't enough. It parodies them too in Cowboy Funk, which satirizes basically every spaghetti western ever made. Cowboy Andy is actually an homage to the character Nobody from the 1973 spaghetti western My Name is Nobody. Even most of the episodes that riff on famous works and styles twist it in some way. Mushroom Samba, for instance, drops quasi-famous characters from blaxploitation films like Superfly and Coffee into this absurd Looney Tunes-like adventure, a combination I never would have guessed could work. Yes, whether offering its own take on an already rich genre or simply riffing on a classic work, it struts its own style through it all, such that even if you don't know what it's going for, there's a decent chance you can enjoy it all the same. But what keeps its sessions from morphing into a loose collection of individual stories? The characters. Of the main quartet, only Spike's design draws from a real-life influence, Japanese actor Yusaka Matsuda and Tantei Monogatari, but all of their personalities rely on some blend of classic character archetypes. Spike is the hero with the past, the epitome of cool. He's 2 parts Bruce Lee, 1 part Bob Dylan, with a bit of Lupin and Jigen thrown in for good measure. Faye is the irresistible sex symbol, the femme fatale. Jet the gruff strongman with a thoughtful side, and Ed is, well, Ed. All characters you've probably seen somewhere before, but not necessarily together, and that's what makes them stand out. Spike's relationship with Jet took heavy inspiration from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Their unique back and forth make them a sort of odd couple. Throw in Faye and Ed, and you have this weird family dynamic, with Jet in the parental role, though he doesn't want to admit it, Spike and Faye the bickering siblings, and Ed the zany kid. Watanabe designed each character to be an outcast, unable to fit into society. They wear their pasts around their necks, letting it drag down their present and future and mold how they perceive themselves. Watanabe relied heavily on themes of existentialism and ennui. Spike, for instance, is driven by a constant inertia, stemming from a resignation to his past. While they let it affect them in different ways, the similar nature of their inner conflict makes the four the right company for each other. Their unique situation and interplay is the strongest guiding thread through both the overarching and standalone story structures. No discussion of Bebop's influences and homages would be complete, however, without the series' unending number of pop culture references. This is where we get a real sense of Watanabe and the production staff's vast number of inspirations. Every episode brims with subtle hints and nods to countless musicians, authors, filmmakers, works, you name it. Just look at the first episode of the series. For starters, the entire thing is a tribute to the film Desperado. The villain of the episode is named Asimov, after pioneer of sci-fi and space opera, Isaac Asimov. Spike's poncho and appearance are an allusion to Clint Eastwood and A Fistful of Dollars, a film that gets referenced again in Stray Dog Strut. Even the three old folks' names are a reference to famous Brazilian composer Antonio Carlos Jobim. Later, Asimov in Katarina's Last Stand pulls off a Bonnie and Clyde impersonation. Most of these may sound wholly inconsequential to you, but it illustrates how many different places this series came from. To best illustrate what I mean, in consecutive episodes you have one about a crazed assassin that's a hybrid of the Joker and Dr. Penguin in Pierrot Le Fou, a hardened detective caper in Boogie Woogie Feng Shui, and the spaghetti western parody in Cowboy Funk. Despite those zigzagging styles, the show doesn't skip a beat. For a mostly episodic series, variety crucially helps keep it from growing too paint by number, but that's not the only product of all these hidden Easter eggs. Occasionally, one of these seemingly minor references adds a whole new layer to a character, scene, or entire episode. To see what I mean, I can think of no better example than the series' final end card. Even though it'd work great here, the show ditches its normal "see you space cowboy" for this. You're gonna carry that weight. A reference to the Beatles song, Carry That Weight. I'm sure you can draw your own meaning from the line and how it relates to the series already, but let's dig deeper into the reference. Why does this matter? For those who don't know, Carry That Weight is the middle part of the ending medley to Abbey Road, and paired with Golden Slumbers and The End, the last song all four Beatles ever recorded together. Some view the line as recognition that they would never have the success individually that they did as a group. McCartney would later say he wrote the song about the struggles to keep the group together after Brian Epstein's death, the business difficulties that ensued, and drug issues with the group. That it's a sort of longing for their carefree days just enjoying being a band. They would always carry the weight of their past together. Does that not perfectly describe the situation in Bebop? Throughout the series, Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed all carry the weight of their past, until they're forced to confront it in the show's stretch run. Ed, taking advice from Faye, chooses to follow her heart and go after her father. Faye recovers her memory and ultimately comes to terms with the fact that her former life is gone. Jet continues to go through the motions as captain of the Bebop. And finally, Spike takes on Vicious and the Red Dragon Syndicate in what amounts to a suicide mission because he can't let his former partner walk away after Julia's death. After encouraging him to go to Julia in the Real Folk Blues Part 1, Jet knows no amount of convincing will keep Spike from taking this on, instead sharing a melancholic meal with his friend before he goes. Faye tries desperately to persuade him not to. After already losing the life she used to have, she can't bear to lose the one she has now as well. The final showdown goes about as expected. Vicious is defeated, Spike goes out with a boom, and the series gives us this one last reference. A reminder that the four will always have to carry the weight of their time together on the Bebop, knowing full well it may be the best they ever have. Everyone has to carry the weight of their past in one way or another, and Cowboy Bebop leaves a lasting message that you can't let that weight bring you down. Certainly there are other interpretations you can draw from it, and you don't have to get the reference at all to find meaning in it. That's precisely why it works so well. If Bebop hinged on understanding each and every one of its allusions, it'd completely crumble under the magnitude of it all. Instead, the meaning is readily apparent. The reference simply adds to it, molds it into something new. When I think about it, saying one of my favorite things about Cowboy Bebop is its style is kind of funny, since it uses so many styles from other places, but it's that exact combination which gives it the feel I haven't found anywhere else. It's transcendent partially because of all the influences that went into it. Cowboy Bebop comes from everywhere and nowhere, because even though it may make reference to every corner of the world, put it all together, and it's not that far from a new genre itself.